Radio, just past the 11 o'clock, top of the 11 o'clock hour here on HPR The Sound Radio. 336-841-9380 is the number to call. I'd love to get your thoughts and opinions on things we've talked about. Again, big thanks to Ryan Krasnow of the Big Ten Network, who just joined us on the program and imparted some of his Big Ten and college football knowledge here on the program. Made Kevin look like a silly man when Kevin didn't know the proper coach who was making funny statements. And
Well, it's because they went back and forth the whole week, and then, of course...
Yeah, but that's just an insult. You're calling out the man. The man is a University of Michigan man, and you're calling out his head coach for comments he didn't make. That's not good interviewing skills right there, Kevin.
That's pretty true. But just going back to that point, what are your thoughts on that? You think it's a rivalry? I mean, to me, it's hands down one of the best rivalries in college sports.
Yeah, I mean, it's a rivalry. I mean, it's any game that's played late under the lights like that attracts as big of a stage as it attracts. To me, that's a rivalry game.
But let's be honest.
Again, money in college athletics, it's a problem, but it's a problem you have to deal with. But it's sad when it potentially ruins, and we don't know all the back workings, but sad from what we can see when it ruins a good rivalry, a good college football atmosphere. I mean, they had a record crowd of like 115,000 there at the Big House.
But what I'm trying to say is, you bring up a good point in that it was played under the lights at the Big House, 115,000 people. Before, 3 years ago, Michigan hadn't had a home game under the lights. They installed lights, I think, pretty recently.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we'll have to have Ryan call back in and give us the answer on that, but... From what I can remember, I think the first game that Michigan played under the lights at the Big House was against Notre Dame. That says all you need to know.
Yeah.
The first time they decided to play a home game under the lights was against Notre Dame. And you're telling me it's not a rivalry?
Yeah, it's sad. I mean, again, it's sad when stuff happens like that. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, twitter.com/theace4, twitter.com/KRuss0719, and twitter.com/Jeffrey L. Gilly. Also follow the program on Twitter, twitter.com/the_Prowl2012. Also follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/the-Prowls, I believe is what the lingo is there, or otherwise. Follow Jeff, Kevin, or I on Twitter and Facebook, and we'll link to that page.
If you do follow me on Twitter, you just saw my last tweet. I tweeted at our show producer here and board op, Jeffrey L. Gilly. And I tweeted at him, just made up Levante David University. Go there if you're trying to learn how to lose a football game. And that's just kind of making fun of Jeff, because during his update, he was trying to say Levante David cost the Buccaneers the game, and he said Levante David of Levante David University. So I figured I'd just, poke a little fun at Levante David.
Yeah, so there we go. So Jeff, go ahead, your rebuttal.
I just want to, it's not a rebuttal. I just want to say, keep an eye on that name. Remember that name, Levante David, because he's a big up-and-coming star. Mm-hmm. But I do apologize. I was meant to say Nebraska, because he was his second-year player from Nebraska.
There we go. So Jeff gets his chance to get it right as Kevin once again breaks the microphone here in the studio. So
these mics are just breaking.
We are
like crazy.
having all sorts of fun dilemmas here on the program, but we will get back to talking sports, because that is probably where the vast majority of our limited knowledge lies. So again, we thank you for joining on the Prowl. Give us a call, 336-841-9380, the number to call. We also have a question out there on the social media, on the public internet, as my mom likes to say. We asked the question, who would play Tim Tebow in a Tim Tebow movie? So feel free to answer that question both on our Facebook page. We have it posted there. You can just tweet at us on Twitter with your thoughts. Now, I found a couple websites, and we'll talk about college football here in just a second, I promise you. But I found a couple articles about who would play Tim Tebow in a Tim Tebow movie. Because, believe it or not, this question has been asked before. Now this
surprising,
was
a Tim Tebow question.
Surprising, Tim. Now this was back in 2009, which is kind of at the very beginning of Tim Tebow craziness. So they listed Jake Gyllenhaal, Chris Pine, who was from the Star Trek movies. Let me finish my list, then you can talk. James Vanderbeek. He was, I guess, was he in Friday Night Lights? Is that right, or is he? Okay.
I believe Friday Night Lights. Yep.
Also a guy from, I think he was in Dawson's Creek, if I'm not mistaken. One of those really sappy mid to late 90s television shows. Channing Tatum, who that's my trendy pick. Channing Tatum is my trendy pick for it. And then Mark Paul Gosselaar, who is Zach Morris from Saved by the Bell. I butchered his last name, so I apologize, Mark Paul, but you have a terrible last name. But so there's 5 for you to kind of simmer on.
Okay,
and,
but just going through the social media page, we did pose the question last night, and we had a great response 12 hours ago from Kevin Levine. Now, I don't know, Kevin, not a friend of mine. I'm assuming he's a friend of yours, because if you're listening to this show and you're not a friend of ours, thank you, but very surprising. He writes, well, seeing as how he's out of a job right now, I believe Tim Tebow could do it.
See, and Kevin makes a very
That's a great
valid
point. I mean, he's not in the NFL. He's not doing anything with his life. Let's give him a job. The unemployment rate's high. Let's put him to work.
And he won't play tight end. Now, I don't think he's suffering as much as other people. So, but
I don't know. His contract with the Patriots, remember, was for no guaranteed money, so he hasn't made anything.
Yeah. So that's our question out there. So we'd love to have your response to that.
And a friend of the program, Pat Budd, just writes, Morgan Freeman. Really, Pat?
I mean, we could see Morgan Freeman. I mean, as Pat mentioned, he played the role of God in Bruce Almighty. So crazier things have happened. Who knows? But regardless, we will talk some legitimate football talk now. We apologize. We will stop.
But keep posting your comments on that, because it's a fun little way for us to get off tangent and really.
Oh yeah, I mean, I
get off the sports talk for just a little bit. So let's talk some stuff college football. That was obviously from Thursday night on, again into the weekend. A lot of the big names won, like we anticipated. Oregon, a couple big names
Ohio
lost,
State, a couple big names lost. We'll get to those in a second. Clemson, Stanford, South Carolina, Georgia, I guess, is where we will start on a twofold question.
Well,
South Carolina looked pretty good week 1 against North Carolina. Georgia suffered a tough defeat on the road at Clemson. So Georgia goes in at home, gets the victory, 41-30 over a pretty good South Carolina team. Aaron Murray, 4 touchdowns, has a great day. The second part of this statement, I guess, is that Jadevon Clowney, it has come out, is that he is frustrated in a lack of creative thinking from his coaches or whoever, because he consistently lined up on the right side of the defensive line for South Carolina in the Georgia game, and Georgia consistently ran plays away from him. And Clowney says, well, why am I not somewhere else? Because Clowney has 6 tackles and 1 sack in 2 games.
Well, that's really where I wanted to start. And you bring up all the games, but I think the biggest story of the weekend is the best player in college football is unhappy.
Yeah.
And a guy who is projected to be the first overall pick is really having a subpar year. I mean, he's below average right now in his play at the defensive end position.
Mm-hmm. He's
and
played most
into
of
the
the
season,
snaps,
I'll be honest with you. You hear all the talk about him being in the best shape of his life. Okay? To me, the guy is too small to play defensive end in the NFL. Have you noticed that? He got into this great playing shape, but you look at him on the field, he does not look like an NFL caliber defensive end, body-wise. Now, I know he has the athletic ability to do it and everything. To me, he looks more like a linebacker who's going to rush the quarterback.
He's 6'6",
He's scary to me. He's a
270.
scary prospect to me.
He's 6'6",
But take a
How
look.
does that not look like any defensive end in the NFL?
Take a look at him on the screen, and he just looks.
He looks like a stud. He
doesn't
looks
look like
an
a defensive end
absolute
stud, though.
stud.
I realize his size says otherwise, but if you just look at him, they say a picture's worth 1,000 words.
Look at him when he's standing there, or look at him when he's moving, because either way, he still looks like a stud.
Again, I get that he can move, and he looks great out on the field against these college-level offensive linemen. I know he went up against a couple good ones the first 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I get that. But to me, he is not going to be able to translate his body size. You look at DeMarcus Ware, you look at Jason Pierre-Paul, put Clowney next to him, he doesn't look anything like him. And those are the guys you're going up against. Those are the 2 best, you could argue the 2 best defensive ends in football.
Maybe it's just that red color that South Carolina wears that's not
I don't know, but to me,
it's not
he
very
looks
becoming
more
to
like
him.
a linebacker.
I don't think it matters where he's going to play
It
in
does,
the NFL.
though, because you're not going to draft a linebacker first. I don't think you're drafting a linebacker first overall. A guy who's changing positions, I should say, from defensive end to linebacker.
Oh, no, I think you will, because I would pick DeMarcus Ware number 1 overall if DeMarcus Ware like he is, because DeMarcus Ware looks like him, and DeMarcus Ware plays defensive end and line, can play both.
But
that's
to
what
me,
I see
that's a
Jadavion
scary
Clowney.
proposition to have a guy go from playing defensive end to having to have him probably move to linebacker and play at points in time as a cover linebacker. To me, it's a scary proposition to waste your first overall pick when you've got guys like Bridgewater coming out. Mm-hmm. It's scary to me. And if I'm a team, and sadly, my team might be one of those teams who has the first overall pick, even though I know they won yesterday and I'm amped about it. But to me, if the Jets have that first overall pick, I'm scared as heck they're going to pick Clowney because I think it'll be a bust. Not necessarily a bust. I shouldn't say that, but he won't be worth a first overall pick.
We'll see how that goes. But, I mean, just in terms of his performance on the field for right now, I think he makes a good point. If this is true, obviously it's true what he's saying that he's frustrated. I think he does need to be moved around. There's no reason you've got an athlete like that, a player like that. Why is he not seeing a couple different positions along the line?
I'll tell you why. He's got to learn. At the NFL level, you normally see the guy, like I said, Pierre Paul and Ware, rushing off of a similar side. Okay, so if he's going to be an NFL player, he's got to learn to do that, first of all. He's got to learn to take his assignment and do the best he can with it. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying he's not doing the best he can with it, but he's got to learn to really make adjustments himself to his technique or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But the big thing is what if you're moving Clowney around, that means you're moving one, maybe two other guys around. Guys who aren't as skilled as Clowney. Guys who aren't as mentally necessarily prepared as Clowney. So you're putting two other guys out of a position they're comfortable with, and that's hurting the whole team defense.
Yeah.
I get Clowney wants to have more individual sacks and tackles, but if you're doing it at the cost of the rest of the defense, it's not worth it.
Yeah. I think another storyline from the South Carolina-Georgia game is both quarterbacks played pretty well. Connor Shaw, 16 of 25, 228 yards, two touchdowns, no picks. Aaron Murray played phenomenal, 17 of 23, 309 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. But there were two stud running backs. One that we knew about in Todd Gurley coming from Georgia, led the NCAA in rushing yards last year. He is just a physical load to take down. He's kind of like a quicker Brandon Jacobs is what I look at, but much more talented than Brandon Jacobs ever was. And then Mike Davis from South Carolina, 16 carries, 149 yards, and a touchdown. And he's the guy that's kind of surprising. We know you lose Marcus Lattimore, lost him last year to injury. You lost some other pieces, Bruce Ellington, the running back. You lost, not Bruce Ellington. I'm trying to think of somebody else. Anyway, they lost another playmaker, skill position guy. So Mike Davis, 5'9", 215 pounds, has come in and already in 2 games has eclipsed or gotten close to eclipsed his rushing yards from last year. He's got 2 back-to-back 100-yard games, 2 back-to-back 1-touchdown games, 2 back-to-back 75-yard touchdown runs in 2 games. The running back position, I think, is what's gotten overshadowed at times in the college game by both really good quarterbacks and really good defenses. I think sometimes we forget how good some of these running backs actually are.
Well, you want to know why? All you have to do is look at the NFL. I'll ask you this question. I'll ask it out to the viewing or listening audience as well. And I know Jeff knows it because he's an NFL nerd. But who led the league in rushing this week in the NFL?
I don't know who ran over 100 yards in the league this week.
Terrell Pryor.
Really?
So if you want to know the answer to the question on why people are not putting as much pressure and as much hype into the running back position, that's your answer. Because the running back position is a dying position in the NFL. Now, I know Peterson's obviously good, and even in fantasy leagues, you're still going to draft a running back first overall because they get you the most touches.
Yeah.
But so many teams this year and in the past couple of years have been going to those 2 running back, I guess you'd call them sets, or 2 running back depth charts. To me, that's why you're not seeing so much hype at the college level running backs, because they're just not translating to the NFL.
Yeah.
You'll get a guy who comes in, he has 2 good years in the NFL, then he blows out a knee and he's done. That's really what it is. I mean, sure, we've had guys like Peterson, but other than Peterson and maybe Arian Foster, Ray Rice, guys like that, who has really survived a long career in the NFL recently as a running back?
Yeah.
Not too many guys. And to see Terrell Pryor lead the NFL in rushing with 112 yards in week 1, that should tell you all you need to know. It's a passing football league. Tony Romo goes out yesterday with a rib injury, and yet they still threw the ball 49 times in that football game, and they never trailed. 49 times he dropped back to pass, and they were never trailing in that football game.
Yeah, I mean I guess it is. It's a losing or a lost position sometimes. And the funny thing is, NFL game.
Before the season, people are saying, "Oh, Dallas is going to get back to running the ball." No, they're not. Come on,
they threw it a lot.
They threw it a lot. They threw it with a quarterback who couldn't even make a deep ball throw to Des Bryant in that third quarter. Bryant's wide open on a streak play down the middle of the field, and Romo underthrows him by 15 yards because he's got a cracked rib.
Yeah.
Or the wind got knocked out of him, as they said.
So, yeah, Tony Romo, we'll see how he goes. But we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll talk some more college football. We'll also touch on an issue that's gaining some traction right now about the NCAA in terms of allowing transfer and transfer waivers. So that's something we're going to end the program with. We'll take a break. We'll come back here on The Prowl with Kevin Ace on HPR The Sound. We welcome you back into The Prowl with Kevin Ace here on HPR The Sound Radio. 336-841-9380 is the number to call. You just missed a very spirited debate here during the break, so that's why we played a couple more PSAs, because Jeff and Kevin had to get their blows out about Jadevoen and Clowney. So that'll be a topic that we may pose. And I think that might be a good Twitter question, a good social media question for this next week is Jadevoen Clowney all that he's cracked up to be? B, what would be his position in the NFL? C, does he fit in the NFL and we'll talk all about that next week. So we'll give everybody a week to kind of...
I just want to say, we're talking about this. I think it's a matter of personal opinion. Don't get me wrong. Do I think Clowney will be a good NFL player? Yes. He's obviously a great college player. 100% understand that. I get where Jeff's coming from and saying he's one of the best prospects of all time. But to me, or defensive, you said defensive pass rusher prospects?
Greatest prospects.
But to me, and we brought up a Wake player, and I know this will anger some of our listeners, but to me, it's a very similar comparison. Now, I know it's different positions, but Aaron Curry, for example, and actually I don't know if my friend Nick Polak's listening, who's a huge Seahawks fan, but the Seahawks were the team that drafted Aaron Curry out of college, out of Wake.
He was 4th overall, I believe, in
Curry
2005.
was supposed to be the guy that was the safest pick in that draft. The surest thing. I forget who went in front of him, but he was the surest bet. Like, people said, if you draft Curry, you know what you're getting. You're getting a great linebacker who's going to be a staple of your team's defense for the next 10 to 15 years. Mm-hmm. That was what Kuiper was saying. That was what McShay was saying. Okay, the experts were all saying that. What happens? Curry's not even in the league anymore. And the reason is because he was a tweener. Now, I know Clowney is a tweener, in my opinion, between defensive end and linebacker. And even Jeff admitted in a 4-3 system, he'd probably be an outside linebacker. Or a 3-4, sorry. In a 3-4 system, he'd probably be the outside linebacker. So you're admitting that there is some room for him to switch positions. To me, that's not someone you use a first overall pick on. You draft first overall for a guy who's going to be at a position, you're adamant that he's able to play there, and he's going to be the best at his position for 10 to 15 years. And for me, you can't definitively give a position on Clowney, and that's why I don't think you waste a first overall pick on him. I still do think he's a top 10 pick easily, probably top 3 or 4. But I don't waste a first overall draft pick on him.
Okay, we're 2 weeks into the season, so I'm not gonna label anybody anything right now. All I said was he has 6 tackles and 1 sack, and he's unhappy, which I would be unhappy